welcome to Common Mansplaining. Ladies and gentlemen, I am back in business, ready to get back in the saddle. It is finally time for Common Mansplaining to return and bring you guys fabulous entertainment, no spin news, and the best of information politically. Now, I had tried to cure my health. My health had been experiencing some issues. A lot of that squared away. Some of it is not. So I'm going to continue to try to square that away as we move forward. But I got some big news for you. Today, we're going to talk about the Maduro abduction, how it was conducted, what the political and sociological ramifications are, what the political and global strategic ramifications are, and the left and right media spin that has been generated as a consequence, and what that means for us. But before I get started, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please share this with both of your friends. Common Mansplaining is really going to start taking off, and I could really use your help. Now that I'm back and I'm finally rejuvenated, back from the holidays, I'm going to dedicate a lot of time into this channel. I'm going to try to start giving you at least a couple of long form videos a week. I'm going to try to get an upgrade in the software. I'm going to try to do a lot of things to make this a better show to watch and a more enjoyable show to watch. Unfortunately, I can't fix my face, not without a lot of plastic surgery, so you're stuck with that. But the rest of the show should be relatively engaging, and I'm going to try to bring you a little bit more than we have been doing in the past. So, all right, on roughly 1 a.m., January 3rd, the United States conducted what in the British parlance that they would call a sack of Maduro and his wife. We went in. It was actually a very complex. Hey, Brandon, how's it going? Welcome aboard. It's actually a complex operation involving over 150 aircraft from 20 different bases, lots of different ground forces. It was executed with precision. It was done very, very, very capably. We basically wiped out all of their air defense and radar capability, creating blackouts, which allowed us to move in relatively undetected. We moved very, very swiftly. They even got to him. I guess Maduro was in the process of trying to get to his panic room, and they were able to stop him before he got there. So it was that quick, right? Like literally minutes from bang to bullets to bringing him back. And not a single American troop was lost. Many enemy forces suffered casualties, and actually most of them were remarkably Cuban, members of the Cuban Guard. So for those of you who don't know, Maduro, the former president of Venezuela, he was actually not trustworthy enough to he was hated by his people so much that he couldn't even trust them to protect him. So he couldn't even hire people from within his own nation to protect him. He used a lot of Cuban Guard to defend him, just because their loyalty was to money. And of course, it's a lot easier to control someone whose loyalty is to money than to someone who doesn't really owe allegiance to you because you're a lousy dictator. So the execution was flawless. Largely special forces, largely Army Delta, picked him up and scooped him up and then took him back to stateside, back to New York City to face indictment, where actually Maduro's actually been under indictment since, I believe, 2020, but the indictments were modified to, and then basically the current indictment superseded the previous indictment, and so now he's facing charges of, let's see, what is it? Conspiracy to commit terrorism, conspiracy to import cocaine, possession of machine guns and other destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and other destructive devices, and various other smaller issues. Now, today we're going to talk about whether or not it was right to do this, whether or not it was beneficial to do this, right? Because these are not always the same question, right? A lot of times things can have a positive outcome, but still not be the right thing to do, right? Like, for example, if you are getting beat up on by a bully in school, there are various ways to handle it. Now, there might be a right way. I'm not sure exactly what the right way is, and that often depends on your moral outlook, right? Some people might just, stand up to the bully and fight back. Now, teachers in school will tell you that's the wrong thing to do. Um, and is it the right thing to do? I don't know. That's complicated. It's a complicated moral question. But will it have the best outcome? Possibly, right? If you stand up to the bully, often they finally leave you alone, right? As opposed to, running and telling the teachers, which is what you're supposed to do, right? May not have as positive an outcome, even though it may be the right thing to do. So this may be a similar circumstance, maybe a situation where we achieved the best outcome, but we didn't do what was morally advantageous. But I don't know. We're going to dig into that a little bit. We're also going to talk about some of the political spin. And obviously both sides have their game that they're running. This is obviously a highly politicized event. For the most part, just to give you like a brief intro, everyone on the left is saying this is illegal and terrible, and everyone on the right is saying, yeah, go get them, that kind of thing. So it's pretty easy to parse that, but we're going to go into that. So now Maduro's in New York facing charges, and Delcy Rodriguez, who is a Maduro loyalist, his VP, has taken over temporarily as interim president. And I don't know if she's the right choice. I thought that was an odd choice. So we're going to go into that a little bit later too. It's interesting that they didn't choose, Machado or whatever her name is, the Peace Prize winner, or maybe Edmundo. What is his name? Urrutia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Urrutia, the guy who's actually elected to be president of Venezuela when Maduro basically ignored that election. So anyway, so let's start here. Why did we invade? Right? Why did we invade Venezuela? Now, if you listen to the left will tell you that that the right is claiming we invaded because of drugs. Now, we didn't really invade because of drugs. I'm just gonna throw that out there right now, because a lot of countries have drugs. Now, one of the first things you'll hear from the left is, oh, the right's saying we went in to stop cocaine trafficking. Well, and then the first thing they'll say after that is like, well, Venezuela doesn't have cocaine, Mexico has cocaine. So, first of all, this is just a false statement. Venezuela does have cocaine, as does virtually every cartel in existence, right? Like, to say one nation doesn't have cocaine is kind of silly, but is Venezuela the largest exporter of cocaine? No, probably Mexico is, right? Probably. But that doesn't mean that they don't have it, right? Even a very cursory search on Google or ChatGPT will turn up that Venezuela does indeed have and traffic cocaine. Now, their bigger worry, I guess, is fentanyl. And Venezuela does have and traffic fentanyl. Again, not quite at the same levels that Mexico probably does, or that, siphons through China. China's really the fentanyl culprit, right? So the question would be, if we go in for drugs, if we're just there for drugs, right? If we're there for cocaine or fentanyl, why aren't we invading Mexico? Why aren't we invading China? Why aren't we invading, et cetera, the XYZ? And because you could, and this is sound logic insofar as it goes, right? Insofar as it goes, if the principle is we are invading because of drugs, then it is sound logic to apply that to other nations and ask, well, why aren't we doing it here? The problem is we're not doing it because of drugs. We're doing it because of the complicity of the state with those drug operations, right? And that's the key. Mike Anderson, we're talking about the invasion of Venezuela. We're not really even invading. What we're doing is we just had a brief incursion to pick up Maduro and his wife and give them an exotic, expense-paid vacation to Leavenworth. No, I don't know where they're going, but no. But yeah, so that's the game, right? So it's not right. You're right. It's not really an invasion, but it's only momentary. We're not maintaining ground forces there, at least not to my knowledge. Not any more than what we already had in place. I'm sure we had some spies in place. One of the things that Delcy Rodriguez did as soon as she was sworn into office was to condemn the attack and claim anyone who helped us invade was going to be under strict penalties and punished severely. And of course, we claim that nobody helped us. Now, I don't know if that's accurate, but either way, that would be the answer, right? We're not going to say, oh, yeah, X, Y, and Z helped us, so please go pick them up. No, of course, we're going to maintain our allies and our any kind of covert status that of people we've got in there, any sources we've got. We're obviously going to maintain their position and protect them. But as it stands, officially, there was no help from. We probably didn't need any help. I don't know if we had any or not, but we probably didn't need any. But so yeah, that's the key difference between saying we went in for drugs or we're going in because they are a state sanctioning, cartels. They're a state sanctioning enemies of the United States, right? That's the real big difference. Another thing you'll hear on the left is that we went in for oil, right? And again, you could apply the same logic that they used with drugs. You could apply against them in this case because it's like, well, if we're going in for oil, why didn't we invade Saudi Arabia? Why didn't we invade Kuwait? Why didn't we invade Iran? We've invaded all these places over time, but we didn't keep Kuwait's oil. We didn't keep Saudi Arabia's oil. We didn't keep Iraq's oil. We didn't keep all that oil, right? So the question is now that Trump's in office and now they're claiming Trump is after the oil, why aren't we invading a number of other countries with oil? Again, it's not about the oil. Now, I do agree that oil was probably an ulterior motive, right? It's probably like a material advantage, kind of like icing on the cake, right? Trump knew that we're going to go invade this place because of their complicity with enemies of the United States, and also knew that as an added bonus, we were going to end up with oil, right? So I'll grant them that, right? That's I'm sure that was in his calculations, right? So yeah, there's very right. So as an ulterior motive, he definitely was aware of the fact that there was oil there and aware of the fact. Obviously, one of his first acts after he takes over is to basically confiscate 50 million barrels or something like that, and then he says, "This is one of the this is where it's funny from the right." Trump say one of his statements was that he was going to use it for the enrichment of both America and Venezuela. Now, I fail to see how Venezuela is enriched by us taking their oil. I don't know how that works, but it sounded good, right? Like it sounded interesting. So, of course, I believe that is an ulterior motive. I believe that was something that was in the calculation. Again, it isn't the primary reason. I think it's just a coincidental bonus, right? So we go in because they're complicit with the cartels. We go in because they're forging alliances with Iran and China, and then we end up getting the oil because yay, there's oil there, right? And so that's the simplest reason that we went in. Obviously, there are other. I've heard other excuses, right, from the left. One of the things I hear from the left is that Trump is just doing everything he can to avoid scrutiny with the Epstein files. And I got to say, I am sick to death of I was interested in the Epstein files because I thought there was a cover up, especially I still do, especially with regard to Epstein himself and whether or not he committed suicide. I don't believe that he committed suicide in jail, but at this point, I don't understand how the left hasn't come to grips with the fact that the Epstein files will simply never show them what they want it to show them. And what they want to see is some magical document that says, yes, Trump is a pedophile. That's just not going to happen. Even if it were true, it wouldn't happen. And it's not true. Like believe it or not, we have tons and tons of information about Trump's sexual exploits, and that's just not among them, right? Like we know the type of person that he sleeps with. It's porn stars, right? And so we should be able to drop this Epstein business. Now, for the record, I think that it's important to continue getting all the information there that we can, because it's just important to do that, to bring, these sexual predators to justice if we ever can find them. But the problem is, these are the most powerful people on earth. I'm guessing most of the information that would implicate somebody is heavily redacted or is, has been, put into a shredder or a burner or something and has just kind of vanished off the face of the earth. I seriously doubt that there's any more meat to be gained from this. But you know what? By all means, keep digging, but don't act like Trump is really trying to evade them, because he isn't. He doesn't care about the Epstein files anymore. Nobody does. Not only that, most of the stuff that has come out about Trump from the Epstein files is already out, right? All the pictures with him, and we all know that he was a friend of Epstein's, right? So this is not special. This is not new. This is not different. He doesn't have to avoid those files. He doesn't. There's nothing that he needs to distract from, because there's just no information left to get. So, all right. So please drop if you guys would just do me a favor, just drop the Epstein files for now. I mean, just at least stop pretending like this is an excuse that Trump uses. He's not using that as a thing to avoid. He's not. All right. So, one question I had is, does this qualify as war, or does it qualify as a police action? Right? Because one of the problems I have with this, and this is, I understand, for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome aboard, by the way. Thank you so much. And please like, share, and subscribe. For those of you who are new to the channel, I am a non-interventionist. So I don't believe in getting involved in every cubic centimeter of the globe. And I don't believe in being the global police force of the world. And I don't believe in getting involved in I don't believe in taking away other nations' right to self-determination. Right? That's just as simple as that. Now, unless they are a direct and immediate threat to our nation. Now, we have a history of taking action against other nations that could potentially be a heavy threat. But we also have a history of getting involved with nations that aren't really a threat, right? That's just kind of the thing that America does. We're imperialist, and that's, I'm perfectly willing to admit that, right? Now, as a non-interventionist, I don't like that. I don't like getting involved in everybody else's business. Now, one of the things that I've heard all throughout this whole situation with Venezuela, starting with blowing up these boats, right? The very first thing I would hear is, oh, we're allowed to do this. We're allowed to take this lethal force against other combatants because we're at war. We're at war with the cartels, right? That's what I was told. And if we were consistent, I would almost buy it. Now, the problem is, now that we've picked up Maduro and carted him back to the States for indictment, now our excuse is, oh, this is just a police action. We're not at war with Venezuela. No. We're just a police action. So now we're kind of playing fast and loose with this. We're kind of bait and switching, right? We're bouncing from one to the other to use whichever one is more appropriate or more, advantageous for us in that moment. I don't like that. I don't like that game. That's a political spin to me. I don't like that game. I think that you should just be honest with yourself and just say, hey, look, we're doing this because we think it'll bring the best outcome. Forget whether or not it's right. Forget whether or not, this, that, and the other. We'll just you say, hey, it's technically legal. We can do this. Therefore, we're doing it. Boom. It's best for us. End of story. And if we were honest with ourselves, I think we would get a little more credit too from the left if we were just honest with about actions like this. I really feel like just say this is what we're doing. Now, so Martin says terrorism stretched the state of war and the definition of soldier or enemy combat. It did. One of the things, like if you were to track back in history the precedents for this type of action, right? Like I would say that probably Thomas Jefferson and the Barbary Pirates would be among the first, right? We took essentially military action against the pirates, even though they were, had never set foot on American soil, technically bore us no actual threat, to the nation, although they occasionally threatened our shipping and our citizenry if we were abroad. Right now, that kind of thing kind of set the tone. Now, in that case, it was deemed to be what did they call it? Let me see if the hostis humani generis, right? So generis. So it was like enemies of all mankind, right? So they were deemed to be fair game just because basically they were a threat to everybody. And I don't think that we had any arguments, right? It was kind of universally acknowledged that the Barbary Pirates were bad stuff. And so everybody was cool with us going in. And honestly, throughout history, there have been a series of executive action of that sort, right? Like, Reagan in Libya and, Obama had lots of drone strikes, and Trump seems to have continued that proud tradition. Now, again, with the drone strikes, like a lot of those cases were situations where there was no actual threat to America, or if there was, it was based off of a predictive model. It was based off of like, oh, there might be a threat in the future. And that's, to me, that is unsound logic. I don't like assuming that there will be sin in the future, that there will be evil. I think that's shaky. I think that's like Minority Report stuff. It's like arresting somebody before they've done the deed. Now, that being said, Obama kind of set the tone with his drone strikes in that he shifted the need for the threat to be imminent, for the need for the threat to be like immediate and present, to maybe it'll happen, right? And so if the left has anyone they want to complain to for Trump taking this kind of decisive executive action against a potential threat, right? Someone who's not actually a threat yet, I would think that they would point to Obama and say, well, he started. I would think that they would acknowledge that's where this precedent came from. Now, Obama not only stretched the boundaries of the imminent and dangerous part, but of course, this whole terrorism thing, the way that we fought this war on terror by upgrading them to enemy combatants is largely propaganda, right? It largely doesn't change what they actually are. It largely doesn't change who they are. But it's worth noting that something else has changed with regard to terrorism and cartels and things of that nature, is that in the past, like a cartel would have some power, some nebulous body, but nowadays cartels hold like territory. They have global political influence. They like can execute officials when they want. Basically a lot of times will hold greater power of a state than the state itself. And so that makes them a much more dangerous foe. Now, are they a threat to America? I feel like if we went to war with the cartels, the whole war would be over in a couple of days if we really wanted to go to war with them. Now, obviously, we don't really want to because it's just not important enough to us yet, and we don't get much out of it yet, right? Now, Venezuela was kind of like the one-off, right? Because now it's like now we can act against the cartels, and there's something for it, something to show for it, right? So now we also have 50 million barrels of oil to show for it, right? And the risk was almost non-existent. The reward was great. It's a no-brainer. Now, so it's complicated. Now, one of the things that we've started doing, right, is we started classifying terrorists as enemy combatants, and then now, because we've done that, we can legally use the executive special war making privileges to perform these special military operations. Now, man, to me again, it feels like we're like playing games, like word games, propaganda games, just so that we can justify what we just want to do anyway, right? That's just me. I don't know. I kind of wish Christian was here because he has a slightly different take on it, but he couldn't make it today. But yeah, I mean, I just have to point out that I feel like this game between like calling somebody a narco cartel as opposed to a narco terrorist. There's really no difference between the two. Just the only difference is legally one we can act on and one we can't. Because legally one is classified as a terrorist, and we can use military against them, and one is just a drug dealer, right? And we would just arrest them. Now I don't know. This is the difference. Like we were talking in the beginning. This is the difference between something that has the better outcome for us, and this obviously has the best outcome for it. And I won't deny that, right? I won't deny that we have done what is best for America, but that doesn't immediately and automatically make it right. Now, a lot of people in America nowadays will just automatically assume that it's right if it's best for America. That's kind of like the America First credo. I don't buy that. I think that things still have to be right of their own accord to be right in that context. I'm not okay with justifying evil so that good results can come of it. That's an ends justifies the means argument. Now, one of the one of the things that I hear a lot from the left is that that Trump is imperialist, right? And I don't know if he is. I don't know. I know that he has these tendencies to try to grow America, and that's easy enough. I'm not sure if he's after imperialism though. It's almost like he's more after like personal recognition. I feel like Trump really just wants to stake his claim over America and American history. He wants to say, look, I was the president that got us X. I was the president that got us Y. And if among those things are Greenland and Venezuela, I think he's down for it. I don't think he's necessarily in it for the imperialistic sake. Now, that having been said, I don't think he cares either. I don't think he has a problem with being imperialist. So it's an interesting question. I think this is obvious a case where the threat is not clear or present. I think that Maduro could have gone on being the sovereign of his state indefinitely, and we would never have had a serious problem. That's just my personal take. Now, again, we're doing this in his case because he's basically sanctioning the cartels as opposed to just, like having it like Mexico, for example, they have a lot of cartel activity, but they're not actually actively sanctioning them as a state, right? They just have a lot of cartel activity, and maybe the cartels have some sway that Mexico isn't happy with and can't control. But Mexico isn't directly saying, yeah, yes, you're good. Let's work with you. Let's help you avoid law enforcement. Let's help you get whatever you need, shore up your supply lines. Maduro is doing all that, right? He was basically like Chavez, only just slightly less competent at his job. And that makes Venezuela unique, right? None of the other nations that we could and would walk into and invade are that complicit with our enemies. Now, the fact that China was literally sitting down to tea and crumpets with Venezuela while we invaded probably had something to do with it too. Now, I don't feel that it's innately right to take away a nation's self-determination, right? So I don't think it's right of us to say who someone can be allies with and who someone, is not allowed to be allies with. I don't think that's something that is within our power. One of the unique things that I hear all the time, though, from the left again, is that they're basically the way they treat America a lot of the time, and this is not just the left, this is basically global, this is worldwide. Everybody treats America like we're supposed to be the police force of the globe, but only when it's a cause that they kind of approve of, right? So it's like Russia invades, and then everybody wants America to leap to solve that problem for us, right? To solve that problem for the world. Right. The moment something happens there, it's America's fault. Israel does something, and it's all of a sudden it's America's job to step in and fix everything. But then when we deem it appropriate to fix something, like in Venezuela, all of a sudden everybody's up in arms. And I'm trying to figure out what principle I can apply there, because I really can't figure it out. Like, it's honestly, guys, you just either have to accept that America is the global police force, or America ought not be the global police force. And either one, I'm okay with consistency. Now, I don't think of it as the global police force, and I don't think it should be, but I'm consistent on that front. I will always tell you, look, no, we shouldn't be, right? And it's not like, oh, no, we shouldn't be until there's something I really want us to do. No, I just say, no, we shouldn't be, period. And others, I'm okay with you having the opposite view. I'm okay with you saying, listen, we should always be the global police force. America should run the world. That's fine, as long as you stay consistent. What I don't like is jumping back and forth. I hate when someone says, oh, you can be the global police force until Trump does it. And then because Trump did it, everybody hates Trump. Everything that Trump does is wrong. So this has to be wrong. Bad Trump. Right. That's not okay with me. That's like a logically unsound argument. So we should seek to avoid those as often as possible. Excuse me 1 second. So yeah, again, if you're going to be interventionist, I say be interventionist, and if you're not, don't. But I don't like the flip-flopping. I don't like when people want us to be the global police force only sometimes, right? So Hector Andrade says Trump claimed to be anti-war and anti-intervention. Yeah, he did actually. Well, he claimed to be anti-war. I don't know if he claimed to be anti-intervention, but you are right that he doesn't like wars. And I think it is clear that this is not a war, right? What Trump really doesn't want, what he really wants to avoid, are long-standing, long drawn-out wars, right? So that's the kind of thing that he's really trying to avoid. This obviously isn't that, right? It was a 3-hour operation or something like that. We're not stuck in Venezuela. We're not committing thousands and thousands and thousands of troops just to hold ground, right? Because we just don't have to, right? One of the advantages of our situation in Venezuela is that one, we have naval control of it because we have the blockade, we have the carrier group out there. So basically, anything that comes in and out is up to us, right? Another is we've shown that we can reach literally anyone in the nation anytime we want. So we don't really have to be in the nation to have our presence felt, right? We don't have to be present to show them, look, you guys got to get right. And look, all we really want, and this is, despite the fact that I don't think that we should be in there at all because I'm a non-interventionist, all America's goal here is, all we really want is for Venezuela to stop being complicit with our enemies, right? Obviously, the Monroe Doctrine has America basically, is we're managing ourselves, right? We're the West. We manage the Western Hemisphere. We manage this. The East can manage themselves. Now, Venezuela is trying to mess with that a little bit in that they're bringing China over, and part of it's, Belt and Road stuff. Part of it's just like their anti-Americanness, right? They just don't want America to be in control of the Western Hemisphere, I guess. I don't know. But so when you've got a situation like that, that's kind of like, it's really inviting the wolf to the lion's den. It doesn't make sense to have them over here. Now, as far as is Trump actually anti-interventionist? I don't know. I don't know if what Trump's. I mean, obviously, he's shown that he's not afraid to get involved if he thinks there's an immediate threat, like the nuclear bunker in Iran. He's also shown that he won't stay there, right? He's shown that every operation he's conducted has been really, really quick, really, really decisive, and has taken care of whatever business he wants to take care of, and then whoop out. And then let's see. Then Hector asks, "What do you think will happen after a power vacuum?" I thought that Delcy Rodriguez was a bad choice. I don't think that she's I don't think that we should let a Maduro loyalist keep sway. But I do admit that it's probably the fastest, easiest answer, right? Like I think Machado would have been a better choice, or Urrutia would have been a better choice, but I think it's probably the fastest and easiest way to get somebody to slide in for us so that there's some stability in the region. Let's see. Ram Camino says Trump is an incarnation of Jesus. Pray to him. I don't think I would go that far. I don't think that Trump is very holy. Now, that being said, you don't have to be holy for God to work through you, right? So God can use any tool, no matter how blunt, and Trump is blunt. But yeah, God can use any tool to work through. So you don't need Trump to be, Jesus to help with God's plan. Let's see. Hector says, "What about the U.S. military bases in Korea? The U.S. has bases in Europe, had threatened against any action from China and Taiwan. It's hypocritical." Well, so U.S. again, yeah, U.S. has its own stances. So I wanna parse between what U.S. stance is and what my stance is, right? So I'm a non-interventionist. U.S. is not non-interventionist. They are very interventionist, right? The U.S. is definitely imperialist. The U.S. is definitely about holding power and maintaining power and expanding power every chance they get. That's not hypocritical. That's just mean. I don't know. I don't know the right word for it, but it's not hypocritical. The U.S. knows what they're doing. They just aren't doing what I would do. That's all. So maybe you're a little bit confused as to what I was saying. When I say that I'm non-interventionist, that doesn't mean that the United States is. The United States is gonna expand their power and maintain their power any opportunity they have. Now, one thing that I've always said is I've always kind of been on the fence as far as whether or not interventionism is necessary, because I've always said that I'm not interventionist. I don't like interventionism, but I always have acknowledged that there are times, for example, like this one, where interventionism has brought about the better result, right? And this is pretty blatantly the better result for everyone. This is one thing that I think that maybe the left isn't giving Trump enough credit for, because it's definitely best for America, right? We've got free oil out of it. Plus, we've eliminated a problem piece, right? We've eliminated a problem player who's trying to forge alliances with our enemies. But also, it's best for Venezuela. Like, the vast majority of Venezuela is cheering over this event. Like, Maduro's got a few loyalists who are still saber rattling, and that's it, right? Everybody else in Venezuela is literally leaping off their feet. As a matter of fact, this is a little anecdote for you guys. I on some dating sites, I was actually talking to a chick who's Cuban, right? And she brought up this situation, and she's like, I wish Trump would do this in Cuba too. And I'm like, man, like, and I hear it everywhere. It's not just Cuba, it's not just Venezuela. Like, literally, there are a lot of different nations who wishes that Trump would just kind of swoop in, end the warlord or dictator that's in the area, and then, free them. But now, of course, it's not that simple, right? This one is one of those clear-cut cases where, one, we had the legal precedent to act on. Two, everything, like, all the stars sort of aligned, right? Everything kind of aligned so that it was good for us. It was good for Venezuela. We had the legal ability to act, and everything kind of aligned, and it was great, right? But we don't have that everywhere, right? That's why it's one of the answers to the question, why don't we do it here? Why don't we do it in Mexico? Why don't we do it in China? Why don't we do it in Russia? Right? There's a lot of places, why don't we just attack North Korea? Right? There's a lot of places in America probably could and maybe even should attack, maybe, right? Not in my moral framework, but in at least in like in the imperialist interventionist framework, maybe they should get involved. But that doesn't mean that we can, because there's a lot more red tape to get through with a lot of those other nations. I don't know what numpty means. Hector says, you're so naive, read a book. I've read many, 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 many books, but if you have a book that you would like to suggest, I would be delighted to take advice. So yeah, right. Obviously, we're using terrorism as this kind of like, hey, Gaber, how's it going? We're using terrorism as this like kind of like catch-all phrase to like make something our legal enemy so that we can act on it militarily. Me personally, I would want, something that's only an imminent and direct threat to be something we act on. That's just me personally. So yeah. Oh, if you're asking, am I a true Trump believer? Definitely not. I'm not even a Trump fan. Now, my co-host likes Trump a lot more than I do, but I'd like to think that I can view Trump's actions in a relatively nonpartisan way, right? Like, so I can look at his actions, and I'm neither captured by the right-wing loyalism to Trump, nor am I captured by the left-wing anti-Trump bias, like the Trump derangement syndrome. I can look at Trump's actions and say, look, this is what it is. This is what it did. This is whether I think it was good or bad, right? Like there's various programs of Trump's that I like, various programs of Trump's that I don't like. And to me, it's not about Trump. It's just about the policies, the individual policies. That's just me. Now, I kind of wish everybody was like that, but I realize it's hard these days. I realize that everyone's got their own team, and they want to make sure that they're being loyal to their in group. So yeah. So what becomes of Venezuela now? Oh, one thing that I thought was particularly rich, very, very funny, was when Russia came in and chastised America, saying, how dare you invade another nation? I was like, what? Are you kidding me right now? Russia is whining about somebody else invading another nation. That's funny. That was I almost fell on the floor. I was just like when I heard that, I'm like, and when I heard that, I'm like, listen, Putin, this is how you conduct a special military operation. Booyah! So I wish it was that was just funny. I mean, and yeah, Xi Jinping, a bunch of hypocrites. They know they would do it in a heartbeat and have done it in a heartbeat. But of course, when we do it, that's when the problems show up. But a lot of that from other nations, a lot of the times they're just trying to sow discord, right? They're just trying to say, "Oh, Trump's a meanie," and use that to throw America into turmoil, right? To throw America into this divide that we've already crafted for ourselves. And it's obviously in Russia and China's best interest to have America fighting amongst itself, obviously. Author Eric Hoffer. What's this one? True Believers. Is that the name of the book that you'd like me to? Yeah, I'll definitely write that down. True Believers. Gotcha. I'm sure there's no end to books that uh, discuss political loyalism to the extent where it's harmful, right? Um, but yeah, I'll definitely check it out. If you guys have any suggestions for me to read, I love reading. I go through I was going to say a book a week, but right now I'm actually reading War and Peace, and that's like a billion pages or something like that with a very, very extensive character list that's difficult to track. So that one's taking a lot longer. But anyway, my point. But normally I love reading and I like to get through as much material as I can. And yeah, the more the better. I am not classically educated. I don't have a college degree. I have some college under my belt, but I love absorbing information anytime I can. So yeah, kick them with me. Anytime you have something you want to recommend, I'm down. So yeah. I mean, this is something where I think everybody's getting the better end of the deal. Now, again, just because it's best doesn't mean it's right, right? It's a complicated ends justifies the means argument, right? We can't just it's funny that nobody else seems to think this way, right? Everybody I've queried on this topic has either been like really gung ho, really like, yeah, get him, right? Like, yeah, yay Trump, yay America, yeah. And then, screw Venezuela, right? Or they've been on the other end of the spectrum. They're like, they hate everything Trump does. And so this is obviously evil because Trump's doing it, right? And they've got no principled reason behind it other than Trump's doing it, therefore it must be bad, right? That's terrible logic, but whatever, right? So, but I'm trying to find the person in the middle, like me, who says, well, it's probably best, but it may not be right. And it's hard to find that person. It's hard to find a person who's willing to just take this and like, no pre-existing bias, start from their principles and work from the ground up to see if this action makes sense. My parents kind of sort of did it. My dad is a little bit too loyal to Trump though, and I think it got in the way. My mom maybe was able to view this from a clean slate, but I wish more people would do that. I wish everybody would sort of like, just listen, think about their moral framework, think about their baseline first principles, and then build up into the position rather than starting with the position because they're loyal to a team and then trying to make it fit whatever framework they've got. That's basically a problem in America altogether, right? Like overall, there's like I find far more have these like these I don't know the right way to say it, but it's like they're like constellations of positions, right? And sometimes they all align, and sometimes they don't line up logically. Sometimes there's principles that would literally contradict each other, like works for one of their situations, but not another one of their situations. And I hate that it's like that. And because they have these in groups and they get into the echo chambers, everybody like kind of talks amongst the same people, the same, if you're a liberal, you basically hang out and you're with your liberal friends. If you're conservative, you hang out with your conservative friends. And so they pick up these positions from a lot of their friends. And most of the positions fit because that's why they're on, the left or the right in the first place, but not all, right? And so if sometimes there are positions that are held by the majority party, right, by the Republicans or the Democrats that aren't actually principally inclined, right? They're not actually logically in line with the other principles upon which they've built the rest of the platform. And so we should be open-minded enough to spot that whenever it happens. And we should be open-minded enough to spot media spin whenever it happens, right? So like anytime you see something like, them saying, oh, this is all about drugs or oil, you should be able to spot that as spin. You should be able to spot both of those would be what you would call a straw man, right? Because they don't, it's something that they're attributing as a reason to Trump so that they can knock it down, right? So they say, like, no, you did this because of drugs. They thrust that upon him. And then they say, oh, but why didn't you do it to Mexico? Because that's drugs too. That's a straw man, right? Because they're thrusting it upon him so that they can knock it down. The true principle that's at play here, like I said from the beginning, is that unlike all of the other nations, Venezuela is actually complicit with the cartels. They're complicit with the enemies of the United States. They're complicit with Iran. They're complicit with Cuba. They're complicit with China. They're complicit with all the bad guys, right? So that was why we did what we did. Now, I don't think that makes it right, but I do think it makes it probably best for America. So what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on that? Kick me some comments. I'll hang out and chat with you for a little while. Normally, this would be a little bit longer, but Christian isn't here today, so I don't have anybody to bounce my conversations off of, except for you guys. So hit me with what you think. I'm kind of interested in your reactions to this, and also and it doesn't have to be this; it could be other stuff. I'm going to do. I want to just briefly say my heart and prayer goes out to what's the chick's name? Nicole Good or whatever her that passed away today from ice shooting. I mean, true tragedy. I don't think that it was a murder, but I'm going to do a video on that. I still think that it's I still think that it's a tragic situation, even if she kind of sort of brought it on herself. But yeah, terrible. And I wish that, and I think it wasn't the only option. I think there were other possibilities, things that could have happened that might have been better. Yeah, what makes them bad guys? Nothing. I was being facetious. Now, what I meant was they're enemies of the United States. They're not. That doesn't make them bad guys. Now, there are individual actions that each state may take that might qualify them as evil at that time, right? Like Tiananmen Square probably isn't a good act, right? But that doesn't mean that, that all of China is always bad, right? In the abstract, every government system could theoretically be okay in the abstract, but obviously after practical application, many of them have proven to be more effective means of governing fairly. So I'm philosophically and ideologically opposed to like communism, for example, or any sort of dictatorship or totalitarianism, right? But that doesn't make communists bad, right? That doesn't make totalitarians bad. It just means they're going to be less capable of governing. So yeah, axis of evil, right? We call it the axis of evil. And again, right, it's one of those situations where a lot of these nations are if you were to ask everyone, right, if you were to poll everyone, like some of the nations that Martin is saying, like Iran, North Korea, Syria, if you were to say, hey, are these good nations or bad nations? Most people would point to North Korea as a bad guy, right? Like as a bad nation, right? Because it's led by Kim Jong-un, and he's not a very good person, and so forth. Again, in the abstract, the government is the government system in on paper could theoretically work, but in practical application, he just goes around murdering everybody. So it comes across as pretty bad. Yeah. Let's see. Moot says injustice is at the root of the destruction of every great. Yeah, you're right. You were very right. And America is an empire. One of the things that I don't really want to call it that, right? Because empire's got a bad connotation behind it, got a bad feeling. People hear that word and they think, ooh, spooky Star Wars empire, bad, right? But we really are. We are an empire. We are comprised of many different, composite states and composite, territories and and we have a lot of influence. And now we're about to add Venezuela to our ranks, perhaps, and we're almost certainly going to add Green. There's an argument to be made that we already have Greenland under our ranks, and so yeah, we are an empire. We probably will end up falling. I mean, someday if we don't keep growing. One of the things that I've noticed about empires is that there's really only two modes of an empire status, right? They're basically either inclining or declining. It's very, very rare to find an empire that just sort of kind of holds its position forever, right? You rarely, like, you don't see the Roman Empire flatline, right? You see the Roman Empire grow, and then you see the Roman Empire fall. You see the Greek Empire rise and fall, the Mongolian Empire rise and fall, but you don't see them like hold themselves steady for hundreds of years. Maybe for short bursts, but it's very rare. So it's interesting to consider that, right? So, like, one of the things that Trump is doing, whether for good or for evil, right? I don't like it necessarily, but he's growing the empire again for the first time in a long time, right? Since, I don't know, the 40s or something like that. Anyway, it's been the first time in a while, and America is stronger for it. Whether that's the right thing or not is an interesting philosophical question. But it's probably the best thing for America. So that's an interesting thing to mention. Um, let's see. Martin says, good intentions don't matter in government. Means and ends matter. And government, especially bureaucracy, wants to grow and take more power. Well, I agree with that statement as far as the result of things, right? As far as in government, the results are matters of means and ends, and bureaucracies too. Yes, want to grow and take more power. Definitely. I don't think that means that intentions don't matter. I think that intentions still very much matter. I think that especially intentions often amplify or exacerbate the actions that would otherwise have a good or bad result, right? So, like, one of the reasons that I judge Israel less harshly than I judge Palestine in is because of intention, right? Palestine murders because they're trying to murder kids. Israel murders because they accidentally murder kids. That's a big difference to me. And again, that may be a small difference to some, right? The left obviously doesn't seem to draw a line between those two, but it is different to me, right? And I think those intentions carry over into all walks of government. I think Trump's intent here is to make America stronger. And that is his intent. And insofar as it goes, I do give him a little bit of, like, Eddie leeway, like it's some credit, some leverage, because I know that his intent is to make us stronger. I don't give him a lot, right? I still think that when he does something that he shouldn't, it just shouldn't be done, regardless of what his intent is. But I do give him a little bit of credit. Let's see. Borrowed says leadership doesn't necessarily call the shots; it's those in the belly of the beast. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good line. I might steal that from you. Hopefully, Trump can get the billionaires in line and create opportunity for all. That would be nice, right? Now, I don't know exactly what you mean by get them in line. Like, what would you do? What would you do to the billionaires to get them in line? And which billionaires are out of line too, by the way? Which ones are doing something that you're not happy with? Like, which billionaire do you know that doesn't create thousands of jobs for others? Right? That's pretty good overall. I mean, creating jobs for others seems to be a good thing. But yeah, if you have a billionaire that you're thinking of, which one is out of line, and what would you do to get him back in line? Him or her? Be an interesting question. All right, you guys got anything else for me? So yeah, I'm definitely, but real quick, hit like, share, and subscribe. Make sure everybody sees this. I'm going to be making some serious upgrades to this channel. Hopefully over the next couple of days, maybe the next couple of weeks, we're going to get some new software. I'm going to be putting a lot more time and effort into the channel, into trying to make it grow. We're going to put some more money into advertisement. I'm going to put some more time into, some long form content that you guys can watch. Please watch it too, because it really helps the algorithm to see that people are, like, picking it up, looking at it. Hit the notification bar, the thing that dings every time we make a video. Yeah. Now, one thing I will say, Borrowed says, or Bidoro Dorade. I'm not saying it right, but anyway, the new transportation infrastructure, new cities, electric vehicles, power grid. I don't know about the electric vehicle part. I think electric vehicles, believe it or not, are actually out of date now. Ironically, there are some nations that are actually just skipping right over that and just going to hydroelectric. And it's kind of interesting. But in any case, I don't know that electric vehicles are scalable. Like a lot of the like you right now, what a lot of what a lot of people are having trouble with is they can make an electric vehicle, yes, but then you're still charging it with gas, right? You're still putting a lot of petroleum products in the car, like plastics and stuff like that. So it's kind of a, I don't know, it's like a game. It's like, yay, we've got an electric vehicle, but it doesn't actually keep you off of petroleum. So it's, I don't know if that's even the thing. But one thing I'll tell you is that I do agree that we should be performing infrastructure projects in America. I think that that's one of the few things that Congress is actually charged to do, right? Like they're charged we're charged to the government's charged to defend the nation, to make sure that to provide for the domestic tranquility and to make sure that, people are safe and that the infrastructure is there, right? Like that's really all that we're charged to create an environment in which we can thrive, in which we can succeed. And I would love to see, America run on fusion reactors and yeah, right, like salt reactors would be great, right? Like I'd love to see a huge energy renaissance. I'd love to see a huge transportation renaissance, like where we get these like, you know, hypersonic jets and underground super trains that'll move across the country in a couple of hours. That would be fantastic. I think that would be terrific. It would revolutionize travel and vacations and stuff like that. I think would be fantastic. I think we should move toward that. But especially in space travel, I think we should really, really put money and time and energy into space travel because I think that's a form of infrastructure that will just continue to give, especially its strategic value too. But yeah, I mean, I think that's big. Now, whether or not we're already cramped for money, right? We already have fights over what to spend money on, and most of our money goes to things that are not listed in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. Most of our money goes to mandatory spending, which are basically just handouts and wealth redistribution, and which I abhor, to be quite frank. So I really wish that we would start focusing on infrastructure and defense instead of all this other nonsense that we don't actually really have to have, right? At least not per our Constitution. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you this week. Look for us on we do this every Thursday and every Sunday. So look for us on Sunday. I think CJ should be back by then, so hopefully he will be. But anyway, it was a pleasure, and I really appreciate you guys watching. And look forward to some big things coming up. I'm going to get us on Patreon. I'm going to get us on multiple different social media avenues, and try to bring in a lot of extra traffic. So hopefully this channel will continue to grow. Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining. Keep it coming.